All right, thanks everyone for joining us. So before we kick off, I was just going to say, I don't know where it went. If we could pass around the clipboard, if you haven't done any of, if anyone hasn't signed in, if you could just sign in on the clipboard, just so we'll know how many folks were here, if you want to leave your contact info or whatever. Yeah, I'll give you a quick overview of the presentation. I don't know if anyone has joined online. If you have joined online, there's 8 people. It's like a record for us. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If you have any questions at any time, you can put up your hand, and Lucy's helping out, and hopefully she'll let me know because it's hard from up here. So yeah, I'll give a bit of a background on the project, talk about a few key dates, a little bit about what the project scope is, some of the construction details, what to expect during construction, some project concerns, and then there's an opportunity for questions. You can ask questions anytime. Depending on what it is, that might be answered during the presentation, so it might be worth waiting till the end. But if something sparks your interest right away, if you want to ask a question, go ahead and we'll go from there. It's pretty relaxed. And it is being recorded for the folks who are tuning in online or anybody who can't make it. It will be put on our Engage page, so you can come back and watch my stellar performance again. And then if someone doesn't have a chance to see it, they can also see it. So a bit of background. I'm sure it is of no surprise to anybody in this room. The road surface has reached the end of its service life. Anybody who takes the ferry, which I assume is almost everybody. The intersection of the Stella 40-foot and Front Road requires some upgrading. At the same time, it's an opportunity to address some of the drainage issues within the project area. The village is actually fairly flat and doesn't drain well, so we're going to try and address some of those concerns. And it's also an opportunity to improve pedestrian safety, both within proximity of the school and just throughout the village. So some key dates. So we're aiming to have the design complete in the summer of 2026. So obviously what you see here, we'll call it the 90%, but obviously we're seeking feedback and input, and there can always be changes. And there are some opportunities for you to vote on whichever option you prefer for some of the intersection design work and some of the various traffic calming opportunities that we want to incorporate. So after this meeting, I believe we're going to do an online poll on the Engage page. So you can go and vote on there. People who didn't have a chance to attend can go and check it out and also vote. And then we'll take all that feedback, we'll go back with the engineer and try and come up with a design that works for, I'll say, the majority of people. So the idea is to have that complete summer of 2026. It's going to be phased construction. So phase 1 construction, I'll say cast in jello if you will, but pending budget, council approval, and a bunch of other things. Estimated start May 2027. So phase 1 would be completed in the 2027 construction season. And then every project I've ever done, there's always some loose ends, landscaping, cleanup, that kind of stuff that usually gets taken care of the following spring. And then phase 2 would occur at some point after that.
Could you just say what's in phase 1 versus phase 2, please?
I apologize. So phase 1 would be, I think Luke's gonna help out. So phase 1 is essentially the Stella 40-foot road from the ferry dock to the Public Works Garage / Fire Hall, basically here. And then, sorry, I always get turned around on the island. West of Stella 40-foot to just past the school limit. So that would be phase 1. And then phase 2 would be east of Stella 40-foot to just past Nielsen's store. I think there's a church where the roads guys turn around or whatever, just past there.
Thank you.
So project scope, so it's full reconstruction of Stella 40-foot from the ferry dock to the roads garage, and that would include all the road base, road surface, everything else.
Could you be specific as to the profile when you're done compared to the status quo now of the road base?
So the question was of the profile. Do you mean like the top elevation or what the various parts of the road structure are?
Well, to answer your question, I'd have to point out what was recently done on the Stella 40-foot, where they seem to dig out an amount of clay and put down an amount of rock, and then some gravel, and then tar and stone. Are you going that far, or are you just peeling off the reticulated asphalt and putting a wear surface on top of that?
It's a mix of both. So we are peeling off the asphalt. There is some excavation, however, we are trying to minimize the excavation that we'll do. I'm working from memory and I'll get them wrong. Somewhere we have details which I can share and we can go through after. But essentially we would put down a layer of geogrid. So I think some of the folks that were here when the wind turbines, they saw they put like a cloth sort of grid down, then granular, and then the road. It would be a similar, I believe that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to throw you on the spot.
It's equivalent to putting 6 inches of ground to limit the amount of excavation in the village.
And
So-
then a proper paving, like what's done on the ferry dock, coming out from the ferry dock?
Yeah.
Like actual cement or asphalt paving, like what is already done at the ferry dock?
Yes, it would be true asphalt, not chip and tar or
Okay.
surface treatment.
2 layer or 1 layer?
I believe it's 2 coming up from the ferry dock. I'm not sure front road, but I can confirm
I
after
believe
this.
it's 2 to this site based on the heavy, wanting the heavy trucks coming to the fire hall, and in the village, I believe is 1 to limit the amount of excavation.
Once the presentation's overall, there's a page here with details that shows the cross section, and I'll review it with whoever.
Again, every big truck, every large piece of equipment comes up that piece of road. So
Yep.
it has to be a good solid road that's gonna last.
No, and that was one of the, I'll say the requirements when we started the design project that we were given was, because they also haul a lot of like the aggregates and stuff up here.
Yep,
Um,
yes.
And they do that usually in the spring before, because that's when Public Works is least busy, because winter they're plowing snow and summer they're doing work. So they want to be able to haul that without having to do the road restrictions and things like that. And then obviously the fire hall's on the route and stuff like that. So it was all considered, and it is being engineered for those traffic loads. Sure.
Has the road from the ferry up to the corner, has it been cored to see exactly what the strata is like?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have geotechnical basically all through the village and all up Stella 40-foot. Yeah. Okay, so full reconstruction of that, full reconstruction of Front Road from, again, I get turned around here, just west of the school to just past Nielsen's store. Some intersection improvements where the 2 meet. New sidewalk from the ferry dock to Front Road and to the school, and obviously redo the sidewalk through the village. Sure.
Question, the sidewalk from the ferry dock, are we gonna lose those beautiful trees going down that road to accommodate a sidewalk?
There is the potential that the trees would die as the result of construction. The design
If they're
it.
not getting cut down, they might just die because of the stress of the.
And then who's responsible for cutting down the dead trees that you kill? Killer.
I would say if the tree died as a result of construction and it was my project, I would cover the cost to remove the tree and provide a replacement tree. I realize the replacement trees are not the same as the beautiful trees that are there.
Is there gonna be some road widening at that intersection when they come off the ferry and they turn west? Is there road widening in it?
There's
It's been
a-
in the works for years supposedly.
There is a number of different configurations. Part of the reason this has taken so long, there are a number, is the hydro poles. And there's a hydro pole at that corner that I'm pretty sure every single piece of wire on the island runs across that pole.
Well, they cut the trees down and we're gonna move that pole, it must be at least 8 years ago.
Yeah.
We have moved the pole. Well, sorry, the hydro has moved their stuff on the pole. Bell is going to follow them, so that pole has been moved.
Where the pole sits right now is where the road's gonna end up, which is about 1.5 feet
Yeah,
wider than what it is now.
exactly, yeah.
Hydro aren't gonna move that pole any
No.
further than they've moved it now.
No, the one that's moved is there. It's the
Yeah,
existing
it's
one,
right.
and it gets you about 6 or 8 feet. I think.
No,
No,
If
no.
you look on one of the options for the intersection, it does show where the road widens out a bit to assist
We
with
should have
turns.
this meeting at the intersection, where people could actually see what's affected and how the corner works. That's, because that's not, the pole was moved, like Gary said, a foot or a foot and a half. That's not gonna, my understanding is the township owns that bit of corner.
They do.
That bit of corner, yeah, but it's useless because there's a hydro pole. But you can't widen that turn lane to the right.
We have moved it as far west as we possibly can without essentially.
Moving the hydro pole.
No, we moved the hydro pole, but without rewiring the island.
Mm,
that's the whole thing.
yeah.
That's what Hydro said. You got a cost from Hydro, they turn around and told you you can do this, this or this, and this is the cost of it. And the cost is that you move the pole a foot and a half,
Yeah.
and you put a new pole in, but that's as far as it's gonna go.
Yeah.
Correct? Is that right? Is that the?
That is the general gist of it. I will
Yes.
agree to disagree on how far we move the pole.
Contractor, Gary, is that gonna widen that corner
No,
though?
it's not, because
No.
you've gotta have so much clearance between the hydro pole and the road,
Yeah.
because you don't want car trucks or anything clipping the hydro pole. So, yeah, you might get a foot out of that road, but that's about it.
There is a drawing that does show how much we're going to get.
Yeah, and a sidewalk to fit in there.
I believe the sidewalk is on the other side of the pole, but anyway.
Okay.
There's some right-of-way drainage improvements, so to make all the work happen at that corner and the drainage to work, we did have to do a few little drainage things. And then there's a number of different traffic calming options that we're looking, there's a board there. Generally, I would say in front of the school, and then there's some intersection design options as well.
I have issues, serious issues, with the term traffic calming. Until you get rid of the ferry, people are absolutely blinded, they must catch the ferry. So anything you put on paper in terms of traffic calming is already invalid.
And a waste of money, because it's not gonna work.
It doesn't matter what you spend.
No.
People are blinded trying to catch the ferry.
No, and it is one of the challenges. There are a number of them
It's the only challenge.
that are, I'll say, are passive, that ideally work. Like, obviously, the best form of traffic calming would have a police officer sit at the corner and give people tickets as they fly by, but we all know that's not really realistic. But there are a number of those where they're passive, they're there all the time, and it works more on sort of visual cues and things like that to make people slow down, or encourage people to slow down,
The
I guess.
visual cues are there with stop signs right now. They don't work.
No, I agree. It's more of a four-way yield at this
Yeah.
point, but those are some of the things we're working on. After the meeting, we can certainly review some of them and go through. They will also be posted on the Engage page. Right. Oh, sorry, I did talk about phasing. So phasing, obviously we talked about it already, but basically 2027, budget permitting, which is our caveat we always say. And then the rest of it, those dates are a little further out, so they're a little bit more to be determined. So what are we expecting to achieve from the project, or why are we doing the project? So obviously we want to improve pedestrian safety, enhance accessibility, so we want to make sure that things that are constructed meet current AODA or Accessibility for Ontario Disability Act requirements. Obviously, we want to improve the transportation infrastructure. So like I said, the roads are obviously at the end of their useful life. There are some drainage improvements to make this happen. Some of them have already been done. Traffic calming and community safety. An improved visitor experience. So theoretically, when it's all done and it looks really nice, you might be able to have someone walk on the ferry instead of drive. They could walk off the ferry. They could walk through the village, go to the back kitchen, go to Nielsen store, go down to the dock by the Nielsen store or something like that. Also, a bit of a tangent, but someone had posted a question about hanging baskets, and I asked them to reach out, and I never heard from them. So if anybody knows that person, if they could reach out to me, that'd be great, on the hydro poles. And then community connectivity. So if you actually live in the village and your kids walk to school, for example, they'll have a safer way to get to school or I don't know how many people walk from the village down to Nielsen's store to go swimming. I'm not a fan of snakes, but apparently some people are braver than me.
Then you'd have a problem here.
Yes. I mean, I won't, because I'm not going in the water. So there is a link to the drawings. If you go on the Engage page, hopefully folks have found it. We can sort of walk people through today how to get to it. But if you go on the township website, I believe somewhere there's a link that says Engage. All our projects are there. There's different pages for all the different projects. If you go on the page, there's an option to subscribe. Anytime there's a change to the page, you get an automatic email that lets you know we've done something. If we put out a notice or something like that, if you sign up, you can get this email that tells you what we did or what the latest update was. So it's a good way to keep in contact. We do all the other stuff as well, but it's a good resource. Road cross sections. So there's several different cross sections planned within the project area. The ones I show you next are just typical. For those asking questions, it'd be better just to review them after, because I can't remember if these are exactly from here or not.
So we have put the board out too of the drawings with the cross sections that are proposed within the project area. So that's now up as well.
So some of the factors we use to determine what cross sections we're going to use, the width of the existing right-of-way. I have had some conversations with folks. The village is incredibly challenging because we don't actually own a lot of the road. It's, you know, been established for a long time. The right-of-ways are very narrow, and we're trying to work within the property that we own. The existing road elevations, so we want to make sure that we don't create drainage issues for those folks that are adjacent to the road. Some of the properties are already lower than the road, so we don't want to make it worse, and make sure we consider that. Localized drainage requirements, pedestrian access, and then the anticipated traffic. So this would be a typical cross-section with curb and sidewalk. It says one lift. I'll double check. I feel like it's two. But they're 3 meter lanes and 1.5 meter sidewalk, and it's mountable curb on either side. And then it ties into the existing. It's really hard to see here. We can look after for
What's
those.
a mountable curb, like the smooth?
Yeah.
Or the step up one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a number of different reasons to do it. Part of it is because in the previous slide where I talked about,
So part of the issue is you have to tie into your front lawns, and the sidewalks are pressed out, right? So if you put down a curb in, we'd have issues tying into your lawns and making the connection from the existing road to your lawns. So mountable curb is easier for the connection to your existing infrastructure. It's harder in a rehab in a village like this, where infrastructure has been there
hundreds of years.
hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So mountable curb allows us more to grade into the existing walkways and some of your sidewalks that go to your houses.
Okay.
Additionally, some people, it'll allow vehicle access over the top of it. There's another reason to put into it. Now, if you were doing no new subdivision, generally if you barrier curb, you'd want to isolate the sidewalk from the road. But for this situation in a rehab, that's why they generally use mountable curb.
Uh-oh. And then this is what we call our semi-urban cross-section. So for this one, it would have the granular shoulder and the ditch. So I'd have to look through the drawings. I think there's a few areas by the school where it's done like that, where there's no curb, and it still maintains the shoulder and the ditch. And the sidewalk's actually on the back side of the ditch. So that'd be more what you're typical used to seeing. What to expect. I don't have a lot of pictures of construction on Amherst Island, so these are from Amherst View. In general, construction's the same. I did take out the water and sewer one, so there's no water and sewer coming, sorry. But obviously during construction, the road's gonna get dug up, so there's gonna be some challenges with that while the contractor does their work. There's not water and sewer, but there is, depending on which configuration we choose, a little bit of underground infrastructure, stormwater pipes, culverts, things like that, that have to get installed. So there'll be some trenches and whatnot. While those are done, we'll always maintain access. Obviously, we understand everybody needs to be able to get to the ferry, so during construction, it's the standard with all the contractors to make sure. For a project like this, we'd include in the contract the hours of the ferry and when, I'll say, rush hour is, so they can allow for that when they're doing their work, things like that. And then a little bit more, so partial lane closures. Another project we did this is up in Odessa, but if there's an issue between the construction and pedestrians, we use temporary fencing to provide that separation between pedestrians and the construction site so that folks are still safe. And then obviously there'll be some traffic diversions and typical construction inconveniences, if you will. Typical project concerns that I'll say we generally hear during the project. Delays in traffic control, so I talked to that a little bit. Obviously, if we were to tender this project, we'd make sure we highlight the importance of the ferry and that schedule and how traffic flows here is not necessarily the same as how it flows, I'll say, in Amherst View. Depending on what we're doing, there'll be some, there's almost always rock breaking, so there'll be some rock excavation. It can be quite loud and noisy. There's really not a quiet way to break rock, so unfortunately that's just the cost of doing business. Dust and poor road conditions, we do have...
That's already.
We do require our contractors to do dust control and minimize dust as much as they can, but it is construction and dust is just sort of also part of the nature of the work. Open excavations, so as I showed in the previous pictures, anything that's a hazard would be fenced or barricaded off to maintain safety, but obviously during the work there is some excavation required. And depending on what the type of work is, because of the narrow right-of-way, there may be times when they might need to access your property. So for example, if we install a curb and the curb is very close to the property line, obviously you want us to tie that into your property, so we'd have to do some topsoil and landscaping, put down some sod. So we would need some access to your property to be able to do that work. As well, we want to make sure that everybody can get home at the end of the day or get out to work in the morning. So if you have a driveway, you want to be able to get through. Generally on projects, everybody's able to get to their property every day. There are exceptions when that wouldn't be possible. So for example, if we're pouring curb across the front of your property, the concrete takes a day or two to cure. So obviously...
MTO had offered to pave to the corner. Why was that not done?
I am not aware of that.
Everybody else is.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you haven't been brought up to date. But when they did Ferry Dock, MTO's display like this with boards prior to any of the dock work said they would pay, they were responsible for the road to the stop sign. They were called off by the township with no consultation to residents that lived along there who had seen the presentation saying we would have a paved road to the corner.
Township got the money.
Well,
They
there
ran
was
with
no money here.
So like I've been at the last two town hall meetings and I've heard that comment, so we went back and started digging through files to see, like, so whoever was here during those if there was no negotiation, there's no contract or anything.
MTO had their boards, they told us
Okay.
they were responsible to the
That's
corner.
fair. But at the end,
It was a
after-
concept. It was a concept of what was going to be done because the dock was built as a design build. It wasn't set in stone. It was just a concept.
And it shouldn't have been presented to the community as it was.
Well,
It
was-
certainly created some expectations.
For sure, yeah, but we went back because we've heard a couple of times and like most of us were just scratching our head and
Yeah.
we couldn't find an agreement or contract. And even through that money was received, so there was a decision somewhere along the way that
They
it was
canceled.
not gonna
Okay.
happen. And-
That's good information to have, because
Yeah.
we were under the same, understanding that what we've seen at the meeting like this. So you're saying that any of these things could change too?
Well, it is a public consultation, so if
Yeah.
everybody on the island says we don't want whatever, the raised intersection or the
Or
roundabout.
anything in the intersection?
Most people just want the thing paved and
Yeah.
it's fine. Just
Yeah.
go away.
No, I mean, so we'll take that information back and depending on the results and what we hear, we can adjust the plan. Nothing
People
is,
don't move here to make it a
To
city.
live in the
To live in the city. They like it like it is. That's why they moved here.
Well, that's what they do everywhere, isn't it? They pave it to make everybody happy, and then they spend the next 3 years ripping it all up again.
Well, the idea is to do it once,
Is, yeah, not to do it again.
and then, I mean, we'll be back in 20 years for these maintenance, but.
Can I make a request related to the point of yay or nay on calming? When you're putting this up on the engaged loyalist, could you ask, are you in favor of traffic calming measures? Yes, no, it depends. And then present the 3 or however many you're proposing, and also an other, so people can put in what they would really like to see. Because too many of the surveys on engaged loyalists, you're forced into a selection of this what the township
A, B, or C,
is
and not
proposing, as
necessarily.
opposed to what the community would prefer. So if you have open-ended questions, it would be really helpful to everyone.
I think we can. I'm not familiar with how they set up the surveys, but I can't see why that wouldn't be an option. So I'm sure we could make it work somehow.
We'll make that work, yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing we'll add is, in the event we can't make it work, because technology is awful, my email is on the Engage page. So anybody who wants to send me an email with some different ideas is more than welcome to. I get tons of them. So.
I may have missed it, but I didn't hear you introduce yourself.
Oh, I apologize. You know what? I did not. My name is Joe Grattan. So I work for the township. I'm a capital project supervisor. I generally take care of capital construction projects. My name and smiling face are on the Engage page as well. Yeah, some people may have seen me on other projects on the island. We've done a few, the South Shore Road, or not the South Shore Road, but the flood damage armor stone that we did on South Shore Road. And a little bit of the Nielsen store, some projects there. So, anyway, I apologize for that. Sorry, I got carried away. Sure, go ahead.
You mentioned the constraints with what the township owns and adjacent property owners. On my own property, it's got to be at least a decade ago, the township wanted to encroach on my land. And because it was about safety, I said absolutely. And there was a formula that the county had come up with. Are you not considering, for safety and long-term use of what you're doing, to actually engage the adjacent landowner saying, can we have another foot or two?
In general, no. Only because, well, for a number of reasons. One, I want to make it off the island okay. Two, in a lot of the places, even if we had the property, it doesn't work. So for example, coming up Stella 40 foot from the ferry dock, there's trees on one side, hydro poles on the other. Even if we own the property, it's really limited on what we could do. Or like at the corner, there's a house. I don't know if someone lives in it, but it's obviously very close to the road. So if I took a foot, I'd be in your living room, and that obviously wouldn't work. So there's not a lot of locations where I'll say it's required. There were a few spots where we were looking at property and stuff, but the way the design has worked, it's not required.
So it sounds to me as if safety is not a concern. In my case, yes, trees were taken out.
Safety is 100% a concern. It's I'll say balancing safety between safety and what we could practically construct. So even if we got the property, maybe the trees was a bad example, but like the corner where the house and the general store is and the hydro pole, like all of those things are really fixed, and there's no real way, even if we own the property, to change it without tearing down the house or, arguments about the hydro pole aside. Like we've moved things as much as we can. So even if we got more property, it wouldn't make a difference. So that's the main reason why we haven't asked people about property.
I have a question about drainage. In front of our house where 3 of these big trees are there's ditches. So what will you do about ditches? How will that drainage, if you're gonna pave a sidewalk over that?
So the intent, based on what we can see from the grading, is there is a way for, and we can look at one of the drawings after, but the water will flow to the corner, and then from the corner it will flow south and follow the regular route it follows kind of towards the road.
Under the sidewalk, like there'll be culverts or something?
Between the sidewalk Maybe it's on the back side of the trees. I'd have to go back and
So you're
look.
gonna take another chunk of residential property to build another ditch? Cause the ditch right now is along the road and the trees are on the other side of the ditch.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I know exactly what you mean. Maybe we can have a chat after and take a look,
Yeah,
because I believe there is a solution that covers that, and we're not putting a ditch across your front yard.
okay. I don't mind it on the other side of the trees, but,
Yeah, it may just naturally sheet flow, and the ditch isn't required, and because we're doing curb and subdrain.
So part of the goal is to catch where your area of the curb is, to catch any of the rain that'll come, any water that's coming on the road that's going to your property now, will be caught by the curb and gutter and taken, so it won't access your property, it'll go down to an outlet.
okay, so it won't
So
even have, it won't,
But
a
there
ditch
is
won't
still
be
gonna be,
necessary.
there still is going to be some issues with your private drainage if you have a ditch there that'll have to be addressed. But the idea is if you're in an area of curb, that water gets captured between the curbs and taken towards the natural outlet.
Okay,
There's not much drainage in the village.
no,
There's the one creek that goes on the backside of a lot of houses and the culvert crossing. The idea is to take it to the natural outlet as best we can. And any area of curbs is captured. We did look at one possibility before to take it over towards the school. However, that didn't work out. We were looking at potentially another outlet there, and it just wasn't, didn't work out operationally.
okay.
All right. Additional project concerns. So trees, I know I've talked to a few folks about this, but depending on the distance from new infrastructure, it might be necessary to remove trees. At this point, we're not planning to remove any more. We did remove some for the hydro work. There's also the potential that trees might be damaged during the work. Our policy is we do replace any tree that is removed. And I do fully understand that our replacement trees are not the same as the trees that are removed. Grass areas will be reinstated with hydro seed or sod. Typically, we've gone through a few iterations of this. If it's in front of a private residence or your residence, like your front yard or whatever, we replace with sod. If it's a large open space, so a vacant lot, something like that, we'll replace with hydro seed if it's a ditch. If there's an erosion concern, it would be sod. If not, it would be hydro seed. Sod is 10 times the cost of hydro seed, so obviously we're trying to be diligent with the money we spend. And then landscape features. So head walls, any other types of landscape features that are within the right-of-way that would need to be removed for construction, we'll obviously remove it. We won't reinstate any private landscape features within the right-of-way. If you have driveway curb, like I don't know what you call them, but like your flat curbs on the edge of your driveway, we will generally replace those to the edge of the shoulder.
This is Amherst Island. Nobody.
None of that fancy stuff here. Yeah.
We don't have those.
There's a place somewhere on the mainland, but they got these like lions at the end of their driveway. We're not replacing anybody's lions, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so any of those features, obviously we'll remove them. We'll salvage what we can, but we don't reinstate that kind of stuff. During construction, during construction, we generally have someone on site 100% of the time. One around a white hard hat, there's a couple fellows I work with. So they're always available. If there's any concerns, you can obviously approach them, and they're all very good at helping people and addressing any concerns. We send a lot of information letters. We'll do information letters. We do social media outreach. We have the Engage page. You all don't get utility bills, so you won't get utility bill inserts, but a number of different ways to get information out. Typically, the contractors also put out their own letters, so there's a ton of information if you have questions. And at some point, you will probably all be somewhat familiar with me and have my contact information, and I'm always available to answer any questions. For fastest response, we do encourage you to contact us using the information in the letter. That's usually the quickest way to get in touch with us, especially if it's an emergency or something like that. And then the finished product. Again, I don't have a whole lot of island pictures. This was the best I could do for what I thought was close. So if you were looking up this, I guess looking down the Stella 40-foot towards the ferry dock, you would see the curb face sidewalk on that side, and No, I pointed the wrong way. I've really confused people now. You'll see curb face sidewalk on the west side of the road, curb on the other side, and your driving lanes in the middle. So this is obviously an Amherst view, but that's the idea of what it would look like. And obviously all nice and neat and finished off. And then questions or comments, I know we've been kind of as we go through. Obviously after the presentation, we're all going to be around for the next little bit. So we can discuss sort of specific concerns or some of the more detailed questions folks had. We will make sure all the drawings are posted online. So if you want to take a closer look at your leisure and zoom in on stuff that impacts you specifically. If after the meeting and in the future you have questions, we're also always available. We can come to the island and to your property and sort of walk you through what's planned and what's intended. Just sometimes it's easier to just meet on site and discuss specific concerns. So.
Now, I saw that terrible word budget. What's the odds on this not being budgeted and not going through? You have no idea, right?
I don't really. I mean, it's in our plan. Ultimately, we do have to live within our means. We are starting our budget process now. We have a rough idea of the projects that we want to do in 2027, a rough idea of the cost, and I'll say what we can afford. We kind of work through that list, and there's usually a bit of give and take. This is a major project, so.
Well, if there's budget constrictions here, can you do from the ferry dock to the corner at least?
So
Reduce your budget?
Well, so part of the this has been on the books since 2019, and I realize it's been a long process. Part of the reason for that is the sequencing and figuring out the drainage. So this is, we made some changes to the drainage to make this variation work. This is probably, I would say almost all of it would have to be done because the drainage outlet for this section, not this section, but I'll say the intersection, is you have to go a little bit further south on Stella 40 foot, and then it kind of goes across somebody's property and sort of through the back of the village and then out through the creek. So you have to start at that point and work back because obviously you want to make sure your drainage all works. So we would have to start there, and then obviously you'd want us to go to the ferry dock. So, I mean, theoretically you could eliminate the school piece of it, but then you'd come back in a year and do that little piece. And so I believe we've broken it down into what we think is the logical sequence.
Taking out all the stuff, junk and whatever thing you want to put in the middle of the intersection, that would save a big chunk of budget, I'm assuming.
Not really.
It's unnecessary.
To be honest, it wouldn't be. I will say the biggest ticket items from my perspective on the project is your asphalt paving. Like that's going to be very expensive. And the road reconstruction, like that will probably be the bulk of the cost. And then your concrete works, so your sidewalks, your curb, and that kind of stuff. But you need the curb to make the drainage work. You want the sidewalks, obviously, for the improvement. Those, I'll say 3 things, are probably the bulk of the cost. And oddly enough, the grass and seed and sod restoration.
Kevin was gonna.
Yeah, just a quick comment. We have done work in the past couple of years in Marysville, Wolf Island, before the ferry fiasco happened, and on Simcoe. But just as a general note, on the islands we're finding it's 30% more for just about everything. When you factor in that was for Wolf. Just to give everyone kind of a conceptual idea, it's the logistics that are the killer on these projects. Working on Wolf Island and Township Project Islands, it's the ferry logistics that are the hard things with the cost driver. And everything over here will probably, my guess, cost 23%.
I heard at some point that the substructure of the road was in Stella was with the material that was environmentally bad and was maybe okay at the time but had to be removed. Is that right?
That is correct, and that's also one of the challenges, which is why we're using some of the techniques to minimize the amount that we have to excavate out. And I don't want folks to leave with the impression that Stella, there's a toxic waste dump under Stella, because that's not the case. But
Very small one.
maybe there's one hidden away somewhere. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago, the province came up with a bunch of new regulations about excess soils, and they've been phasing in over the past few years. And there are very stringent requirements for a lot of different parameters. Obviously, hydrocarbons is one of them, but there's a bunch of different tables and parameters. And so as part of our, and it's any project, we do a bunch of geotechnical testing and whatnot to see if it meets those parameters. It's not unique to the village of Stella, so I have projects going on in Bath. It has the same issues. The project in Odessa has the same issues. I'll call it sins of the past, and what was an acceptable practice 50 years ago is not an acceptable practice now. So unfortunately, we're stuck with the cleanup. It does create a lot of challenges on what you can do with the soil. There are certain things you can do depending on I'll say contaminants, but again, it's not a toxic waste dump. Depending on the contaminants and how it can be reused. But it is very challenging, and especially on the island, because everyone on the island's on a well. So there's a different set of regulations if you want to reuse it in an area where everybody's on a well, because obviously there's that safety concern. Whereas I'll say in Amherst view, we have a little bit more, I'll say, leniency on the types of soil that we can actually leave on site. So that's part of the reason. It's part of the cost. It is part of why we're using some of the things like geotextile and stuff like that to reduce the amount of excavation that we're doing.
I was just wondering how deep you have to go to remove stuff that has to be removed.
So if it's there, the intent wouldn't be to remove it. We would just leave what's there. So the way the regulation is written is, if you don't remove it, it's fine, because it's been there. It's been there for, I'll say, 50 years. But if you have to excavate it, so normally on a project, if we excavate the road granulars, then we leave it to the contractor to dispose of, and they'll try and find a way to reuse it somewhere. Because we've had it tested, there's no real place for contractors to reuse this soil, especially on the island, so it would have to be hauled off. So we're trying to reduce the amount that obviously we want to dig down.
They had that problem with the ferry dock, and it had to go to Ottawa. I was in on that.
Yeah, it's and to be honest, I'm not sure what the construction industry is going to do in 10 years, because it's a phased-in thing. The rules are getting more strict and more strict, and it's not just, so obviously everyone knows like hydrocarbons, like oil and stuff like that is bad, but it's also road salt, right? Or salt, and everybody knows like there's salt on every road in the province, and if the levels are too high, then you're really limited on what you can do with it, and it's a challenge to find places to put this. It's really driving the cost. Yes.
I've got a drainage question. I have that little cottage on the corner. That's mine, the little one, but it's just really close to the road.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about drainage issues, and I'm just wondering, you're working from surveys in terms of the grade level, right? And I'm just wondering if you come over and do a walk around and actually see what it's like, because the back kitchen is actually behind there is lower than my property, which is closer to the road, and so nothing drains from there to the road. So I'm just making sure that someone's going to actually set foot and do that walk around, because the survey doesn't necessarily capture that. It's very swampy behind Lauren's place.
Yeah, we did do a walk around. We don't do private property, so if it's, I'll say if it's in your backyard, that's not something that we can really address, because it's a private property owner issue. But we want to make sure we don't make things worse. But we have done a walk around a number of times. The drainage in the village is incredibly challenging, but we have walked around to make sure that everything works, and they have surveyed. So I believe if you're on the back kitchen side, like you're just right on the corner, same side as the back kitchen, there's a small culvert there, so we would have surveyed that culvert and the elevations of that culvert to make sure that the drainage that currently goes that way can still go that way. Oh, I will. We can talk after, and we'll certainly, if there's an issue, we can.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
On that same topic, because it's my house that gets flooded, are you looking at the culvert that's on McDonald's Lane as well?
Yes, there is something there. What are we doing? I feel like we are regrading I'll call it the ditch, so that it gets picked up on Front Road in
Yeah.
a ditch inlet, if I'm,
Ditch
sorry, I'm
inlet on
working.
Front Road and then a storm sewer over to the culvert crossing of Front for the creek. So, it'll pick it up through that as opposed to that culvert that goes across McDonald's.
I'll wait till later.
We can take a look at it, but I am working from memory, but I'm
Yeah, and again, for anyone's concerns, there's a lot of, again, as Joe has said, there's a lot of very challenging drainage areas throughout, and we know that you guys understand your properties, so that's what we're here for. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Luke McDonald, I'm the engineering manager. Our engineer in the back, Kevin, from JP2G, Greer Galloway. So ultimately, we're the ones that are working through the design right now. We want to make sure that if there's any of these issues, they get caught. So if there's something here that you have a concern with, that's what we're here to chat about tonight.
And please don't be shy, you won't offend me. And it is way cheaper and easier to fix it now while it's just on paper than when there's an excavator on your front lawn and then we're trying to engineer it on the fly after. Yes.
The absolute opposite to drainage. I'm interested in vertical profile. Phase one, from the main intersection down to the road shed. And to put it in perspective, the recent work that was done south of the road shed, they peeled off what I'll call the hot asphalt. In my world, I would have preferred a geotextile and build the road up because we have snow that is driven by, in the winter, an infinite amount of wind. So any road profile that is elevated makes the road safer.
I can't speak for the design specifically. We can definitely do it from, I'll say, the last house in the village south, because it's all farm field, and if the road comes up, it doesn't matter. Within the village, we're really limited on raising the road, because obviously most of the neighboring properties are already at road level, so it's challenging. But definitely south of, I'll say, the last house in the village, up to the roads garage, I don't know why we couldn't. It'd actually be cheaper for us to raise it, to be honest, because we would have to dig out and haul away that material.
And better in the long term, because you're getting more road bed.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
So drainage, wise, back to this with the sidewalk from the dock up, that'll eliminate culverts and stuff under driveways? Cause or does it, how does?
We'll have to look.
There won't be a ditch then, so. Yeah, so.
Yeah, maybe after this is done and I'll stop the presentation, I'll pull up Street View and we can take a look and
Yeah.
just
Okay.
have a walkthrough, a virtual
I'm
walkthrough, if
just
you will.
wondering, we've
No,
got
no.
2 driveways with culverts, and I just got thinking if you're gonna put drainage in under the sidewalk or the road, that would eliminate the culverts. You're taking out the ditch.
Yes,
So you're on the township money then?
Yeah.
we're making money.
Yeah.
We can put
You
a,
can have the culverts for each other.
we can put a
They've been there
statue in the
for
middle
50
of
years.
the traffic circle. All right, was there any other questions? Sure.
Hey Joe, I'm Tim. Joanne and I own the general store. She really owns it. I just mow the lawn.
You make good coffee.
Yeah, thank you. I remember you guys. I was going to join you guys. Thank you. Again, really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Just a question on the intersection itself. Because of our proximity to the intersection and the way the phases are done, is there overlap with respect to the east-west, north-south? So how far away from the intersection will the sidewalk go on each of the phases so that we're not impacted, us specifically, by both phases? Will it wrap around the store on the first phase?
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. I would say, for me, from a practical construction perspective, we would move the intersection slightly east so it's finished. We wouldn't do the tie-in right at the intersection.
Right.
So I would say, don't hold me to this, please,
No.
but
Fair enough.
the divide, you're say between the property line between your place and your neighbor's property, in my mind would probably be the logical place to stop. We do I can't keep going down the road at somewhere, I'd have to, but just in my mind, I would say that would be the logical spot, because whatever we decide to do at the intersection, we should really finish, because you don't want to leave the intersection half done. So,
We don't want to interrupt alcohol flow to the island.
that is
That's
key.
the main concern, truly.
And I get it. Yeah. Any other questions? So like I said, we'll all be around so we can kind of go through. I know there's some that are a bit more detailed that would benefit from a look at the boards or whatnot. And if there's this concern specifically to your property, we can discuss those as well. Was there another question or? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.